Hello everyone and welcome to Ukulele Underground University, Ukulele 102, week number 8. So, we have pretty much done more than 2/3 of this entire series, so we're almost there, guys. After this week, we only have 2 more weeks and 1 review week after that. So we're we're almost done to completing our journey from beginner, intermediate to intermediate advanced ukulele players. All right, so let's take a look at what we did last week. So last week we covered mutes and parallel octaves. So mutes and parallel octaves, we were pretty much dealing with a lot of technique heavy things last week. So we did some mutes with our left and right hand, and we also did parallel octaves. So let's go down the list here of what we covered last week. First, we learned how to mute certain strings in our ukulele. So we learned thumb mutes, pointer mutes. So thumb mutes kind of like this. Let's see. And we have pointer mutes that sound kind of like this. So that's in combination with the thumb mute and the pointer mute. And we also learned how to mute strings with our left and right hands. So we learned some right hand mutes just like this. And that is our palm mute. And we learned pinky mute with our left hand. We learned what I mentioned earlier, thumb mutes and pointer mutes. We also created parallel octaves and strummed them. So we created different octaves like so. And then we muted the rest of the string so we can just strum just those octaves. And we also gave you some exercises last week on just to make sure that you guys kind of got those concepts down. So let's go over some of those exercises. First off, how'd you guys do on those exercises? You guys do okay? Or was it a little bit difficult? So since they're technique based, a lot of these things, take a little bit more time for you to kind of grasp, how to perform them when you need to perform them, okay? So during practice, you might have a bit of a hard time, but once you start getting into an actual song and, using those techniques, it might be a little bit difficult. So practice, practice, practice is the key to getting these down. All right, so one of the exercises was like, sounded just like this with the F, and we're using pinky mutes, and it sounds like, we also did palm mute exercises like this. Alright, so how did you guys do on your week 7 exercises? And for those of you folks who have not checked out those exercises, they are available over on UU Plus right underneath the replay video. And we also have the videos of me playing it, complete with the PDF downloadables over on the UU Plus forums. Okay, any questions on that before we move on to the actual lesson?
Yeah, Alan just said that parallel octaves are hard for him, and I just told him that he'll get it.
Yeah, it's just, within time. When I first got exposed to parallel octaves, I was watching a clip of Pure Heart, one of my favorite bands growing up, which is Jake Shimabukuro's old band. And, he was doing this kind of weird thing, and I was trying to figure out what that sound was, because it sounded like he was strumming. So he was, the line was during Bring Me Your Cup. That's basically what he did. So I'm like, okay, I know how to do this. I know exactly what he did there, but when he started kind of strumming, what chord was he strumming? And when I was trying to kind of figure it out, I'm like, that doesn't sound like a chord at all. It sounds like the same note. So that's, that's kind of how I started to figure out how parallel octaves work. It was just basically just the same note, and I just, I broke it down. So I'm like, oh, well, he's basically going. So that's what he's doing, but he also, plays. He also play those notes as well. So I'm like, how do I play those two notes together and strum them? And that's kind of how, I started figuring out, okay, maybe if I did this to kind of mute that string and then mute that string. I used to do it like this, actually, with my middle finger there. But I was kind of watching them carefully, and I'm like, okay, well, he uses his pinky finger, so it was just like monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. So if I see him do that, I'm gonna use my pinky finger as well. And that became a lot more natural for me to hold So it's all a matter of practicing your pointer finger mutes and just adding your middle finger there. So I would kind of practice this technique one finger at a time. So one finger with just the pointer finger there for the pointer finger mutes, making sure you have C to A down, and then adding your middle finger so that you're hearing those. So just one finger at a time, then add the pinky finger there. All right, so for those of you folks having a hard time with that, that's a great way of approaching it. It's just one finger at a time.
You're saying that when you figured it out, you kind of figured it out in like steps, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it is different from just like if you pick those two strings, because you can do that, but then there is a difference in tone between that and the strumming parallel octaves.
Yeah. So those are the things that we went over last week. So if if we're all up to speed, we're able to do all of these things, mute stuff. And if not, don't worry about it, because they are techniques. It takes a little bit more, to kind of get them down to the point where we can just execute them without fail. All right. So execution might be a little bit. It might need a little bit of work right now, but through practice, you'll be able to get it. All right, so last week was very technique heavy, and so is this week. So this week, we're going to be covering bends, tremolos, and expression. All right, so Ukulele 102, week number 8, bends, tremolos, and expression. So if you folks don't know what those are, I'll show them to you right now, and then we'll go on with the lesson to show you how to do those things. So what a bend is exactly this. Alright, so if you want to learn how to manipulate notes, today is going to be that day. We're going to learn how to manipulate notes by doing bends, tremolos, and adding some expressions to our notes. So that's a bend, and this is a tremolo right here. So you guys might have seen this from body surfing. So that fast kind of picking technique, we're going to learn that today as well. And expression, we just want to talk about how you can add feelings to your to your playing. So instead of just going, we want to add some expression to that, so it can be, so you're getting those like, oh, what the heck was that? So you just add a little bit of feeling, or something as simple as slides. You don't necessarily even have to bend it. Or you can do things like that with bends, tremolos, and expression. So if you want to add a little oomph to your ukulele playing, today is that day. All right, let's any questions before we move on? Okay, so our goal for this week is to be able to squeeze out emotions out of our ukulele. Number 2 is to learn how to modify those notes to better match the feel of a song. And 3, to play faster rhythms using tremolos. So let's go down the list here. First, to be able to squeeze out emotions out of our ukulele. I just kind of showed you folks how to be a little bit more expressive with those notes. Especially using things like the bend, it'll really get those emotions out. So instead of just going, instead of that kind of straightforward, you can do. See the big difference between those two? We're playing the same exact notes of. So we have same notes that we're playing, but a lot more expressive by using something like the bend to give us some of our emotions. Even using some of the techniques that we've already learned before. For example, your slide techniques. It'll create more expression instead of just playing it straight of. Alright, so we're going to go over that this week. That's one of our goals. 2, learn to modify the notes to better match the feel of a song. So kind of like number 1, but what we're doing is we're trying to match the feel of the song. If there's an idea that we're trying to get across to the listener, we can use these techniques in order to better tell our story. I like to use the example of that phrase. The quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. So the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. You know, it depends on which note or which word you emphasize will give you a better idea of that sentence, of what that sentence is trying to say. So it's like the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, or the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, or the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, which then talks about the color of the fox, or the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog. It's, you know, all these different ways in order to make sure that you're getting your point across to the audience or across to your listener by adding little things in there to accent certain parts of that melody line. So just like that same example, it's like the quick lazy fox, or the quick brown fox. Or you can do the quick brown fox. Instead of the quick brown fox, we could do the quick brown fox. So you can do things like that and add expression and modify the notes to match the feel of what you're trying to convey. All right, and now we're gonna play faster rhythms using tremolos. So tremolos, you know, we're gonna be learning those today to get to those kind of. Instead of just doing 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we can do 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and or you can even double that speed too. All right, so that's our goals for this week. Are you guys on board with me? Yes? Okay. Any questions?
I don't know. Do we? This one is about a bend, so yeah. Do we want to go over the bend first and then maybe come back to this?
Shoot me with a question and I'll let you know.
So Leanne asked, can you bend a note on a concert ook as nicely as tenor size?
Yes. So. Yeah, that's a pretty easy question. It's all about the technique, and I'm going to be showing you folks a technique today. And bending is not about what size instrument you have, or you know, or how nice your instrument is, or how you know nice it sounds, or how big, or whatever. Like, it's about the technique itself and executing that technique. You can use these techniques on regardless what size your ukulele is, and you can still get the same clear and expressive sounding notes.
The only thing that might be different is it just might project more on a tenor, right?
Yeah.
So like Leanne might be thinking like, oh, it sounds better on my tenor, but it's just like it's probably just like
because
a little
you prefer
louder,
the bigger sound of a, you know, of a tenor. So it's really subjective. You know, that question is subjective. Like, oh, will this sound nicer? It's kind of like saying, well, is this Kamaka nicer than this Aloha or nicer than this Kanilea? It's kind of like that, you know, as far as you know, comparison goes. Like, we're comparing two different kinds of sounds using the same technique. The technique will still work for both instruments, a concert and a tenor, or even a soprano, but the result might be different depending on the, you know, the ears.
Like if you listen to blues musicians, right? Yeah. And like they'll play like on an electric guitar. Like the electric guitar by itself is not plugged in. Yeah. You won't really hear anything.
No,
like,
no.
But then if it's plugged in, you can hear like blues musicians like bend the crap out of like stuff, and they do like a really good job, right? Yeah. So it's like it kind of it depends on what you're going for, what you're looking for.
Yeah, most definitely. All right, so we're going to be answering that in a short bit. So first off, bends. What are bends and how do you do them? All right, so let's go down the list first, and then I'll show you folks. Bends will temporarily tighten our strings and sharpen notes. Bends are an expressive and exaggerated way to go from one note to another. And C is kind of telling you how to do it. Ring finger will play a note and push up to tighten the strings. All right, so let's analyze each point here. Bends will temporarily tighten our strings and sharpen the note. So what bends are doing, you know, when we tune up our ukulele, these tuning keys, and we learned this from Ukulele 100 or Ukulele 101, that when we tighten the strings, you know, using our tuning keys, that means we are making that note sharper or making that note higher when we tighten the strings. When we lower the strings, that means we're making those notes flatter or lower, all right? And what that does is the tighter the string gets, the higher the note is, or the more tension the string has, the higher the note it can reach. All right. So, for example, when we bend, what we're doing is we're temporarily creating an effect that sounds like this. So we're temporarily bending those notes without having to, turn our tuning keys. Because we want it to be a temporary change to our note. So if we used our tuning keys to bend, that means we're stuck with that, and it's going to be a permanent thing until we change it back again. But with bends, you can achieve this in a very short, temporary, just for that note kind of situation. So here's how you bend. We're gonna take a ring finger, and I like to use for practice the 5th fret. Why? Because the higher up towards the nut that you go, the harder that bend is going to be. Try to imagine, like having a piece of string. Bending or pressing down on the piece of string right in the middle is going to be the, the easiest way, or the safest way, or the more bend is going to be right in the middle. The more that you go towards each end, it's going to be a lot harder. So the more you go towards the middle, it's a lot easier. So I think the 5th fret is a nice halfway point between the hardest part to bend and the easiest part to bend. So the 5th fret, we're gonna take our ring finger, we're gonna play it on the E string, so we get kind of this, right in the middle, so to speak. And if we do it in A, then we're kind of on the bottom. We want to do it right in the middle, and this is just for practice. Of course, you can bend whichever note that you want. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our middle finger and place it on the fret right before that. And what that does is it helps our ring finger to bend the note. Because, think about when the last time you used your ring finger by itself to do anything. It's going to be difficult for the ring finger to have enough strength to tighten that string temporarily. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna use your middle finger to back that up. All right. So we're gonna play the note just to listen to how it sounds. My ring finger is on the 5th fret, middle finger is on the 4th fret of the E string. So that's how the note sounds. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna almost lay this, we're gonna lower how our, how we hit that string. So the pads of my fingers right here are, that's where I'm holding each note. See the little indentation? What I'm gonna do is kind of lower this a little bit so that it braces it from the bottom. Okay, so if we're playing that note kind of not full on, I want to say directly on the string, bending up is going to be a little bit difficult. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna lower this a little bit so that it kind of braces for you to bend up.
You're wrapping your thumb around the neck.
Yeah, I'm wrapping my thumb around the neck because what it's doing is I'm almost getting this kind of squeeze with my middle and ring finger. So that's why doing that rock on inner piece is a very important exercise, especially for this. I'm using my thumb to kind of wrap around, and I'm getting this nice kind of, you see my rock on. If I were to do it upside down, it looks like this. On the bend. All right, so now let's listen to what that sounds like. So from here, and you can just kind of experiment to see or hear the difference in tone. And for practice, I like to kind of think about the next 2 notes here. So a half step and a whole step. So if this is a half step, I like to practice by trying to achieve that note by bending it. Right there. And I'm gonna make a mental note of where that is in the bend. So if I want to do a line like, I can do something like, I know exactly where that bend is because I made a mental note during practice that this is about the spot where that note is. So if I do, I can do, instead of, notice my middle finger went down to kind of support that bend. All right, so that's the basics of bending, and of course you can bend it, whichever fret that you want. But take a note that the more you go towards the nut, the harder it is that for you to bend. For example, like a second fret bend is going to be more difficult, and the hardest is going to be your first fret bends. And I try not to do too much first fret bends. And if you really have to bend a note on the first fret, I would just go on the next string up. So for example, if I want to bend this F note right here on the E string first fret, I'm just gonna take C string 5th fret to get that same note, and then bend up. And a lot of people are probably asking, you can bend, you can bend it down too and get the same kind of effect. You can, yes, you can, but I like to bend up on my ukulele. Why? Because I have my thumb up here. And whenever I'm bending up, I can always use what we learned last week with the thumb mutes to make sure that even though I'm bending up and I'm hitting those other strings, it is being muted by my thumb so that I don't hear any extra notes. Okay, so my thumb will kind of cover that. So if I didn't put my thumb in there, I run into the risk of hitting the C string on the way down. This happens mostly on the A string. A lot of people will catch the E string on the way down so that you can kind of hear the E string too. With your thumb up here and bending up, you can kind of mute those tones so that you don't hear anything other than what you want to hear from that technique. All right, those are just basics. Yes.
Yeah, Alan brought up a good point of can you bend the G string without going off the fretboard, or would you go the other way?
I would bend down. So in the case of the G string, because you can't bend it any higher, that's when I would kind of bend down. And bending down, I would use my pointer finger back here to make sure that I don't hear any unnecessary notes.
I think.
But I mean, it's bending on the G string is almost what's the word I'm looking for here? It is unnecessary because the G and the A are so close together. You're gonna do most of those bends on the A string anyway. I mean, with a high G ukulele, even going and looking at any one of our lessons here or monthly lessons on Ukulele Underground, we almost never bend on the G string. And I can confidently say that I don't think I've bended once on any of the lessons that we've done here on Ukulele Underground. Because for a high G ukulele, most of the time we're doing our solos or melody lines on the C, E, and A strings, and the G string up here kind of is being used as a ghost note.
So like with the same thing with the C string too. Could you bend all the way, like Alan said, could you bend from the F note to the G note on the C string?
Yeah,
is there enough space?
So here's here's the F note. So
you do have to go pretty high for that. I think
so instead of going you can just do that. Okay, possible.
I think the E string is used a lot for bending, right? Because like you do like go up with it instead of going down, pulling down.
Yeah.
And then it also kind of
it has all that space for you.
Yeah, and it's not with the A string. You have to go like, you have to push harder.
Yeah.
So it's like that nice kind of. It seems like the most efficient string to bend on, and which just leads to like you bending more on it.
Yeah. So yes, you can bend down on the G. Yes, you can bend down on the C. Totally up to you. Bending up is the more efficient way of doing things. But you can bend down on the C if that makes you feel more comfortable. But you also run into the into the risk of like bending down and like losing it and getting that kind of undesirable note, snap, because it's a lot more controlled if you're bending up. And that's what I'm talking about, like almost flattening out your fingers like this so that you can move up. Because going down, it's like you have less of an area, surface area to work with when you're bending, when you bend down like this, and it might run into the risk of slipping off. Okay, so let's look at some tips on bending. First, use your middle finger to help out your ring finger. We covered that earlier, using our middle finger so that we have a little bit more strength to do the bend. B, we can achieve a note that is half or whole step up or down. So, we talked about going to this note, or we can go to a half step. So here's a half step and here's a whole step, and you want to be able to make a mental note of where those are during the bend. So here is about here, and here is about here. Okay, so, and I know that just right off the bat only because I've practiced, doing bends and have done a lot of bends, but with practice, with enough practice, you'll get the feel for where those bends are going to be located. All right.
Everybody's ukuleles are going to be a little bit
different.
Yeah,
a little bit different.
Too. So you should really get to know your
uke, especially with the kind of strings that you use or whatever kind of tension it is on the strings. They're all going to make a difference. Okay. This is a big one. Push up at an angle and imagine pushing from your elbow to your shoulder. All right. So a lot of people make the mistake of taking it like this, just straight up. See, my fingers are straight up, and just pushing straight up like this. But what you're actually supposed to do to get a nice clean bend is to take it at an angle. See this angle right here? It's pointing towards my elbow, and then I'm gonna bend it up and watch it kind of slide so that it points towards my shoulder. So my right shoulder, my right elbow pointing towards that way. So instead of like getting it like this and then moving up, it's actually hitting at an angle. And this goes with just picking in general. So when I'm picking, I don't necessarily have my wrist down like this and start picking. I have my wrist at an angle like this. So having it at an angle gives you a chance to kind of roll that note up using your using the strings and how the strings are naturally rounded. So you're going to make sure that it kind of slides. I know these are terms for techniques, but you're gonna roll that kind of string, that E string, up and have it slide through these fret wires like so. So I'm going from this, pointing towards my elbow, and then pointing towards my shoulder. Okay, and same thing here. If you want to use your whole body into it, you can go from this position where my elbow is up here, and then just kind of squeezing to bend, and kind of use your entire arm to get squeeze that emotion out. Okay, for those people who who need a little bit more strength, that's a great way of kind of looking at it. So you're almost like squeezing your squeezing that elbow up, and you can see a lot of professional guitar players, ukulele players. If you watch their left arm, it's going to move in so that they have a little bit more strength to bend that note. It's like almost a whole arm that's involved with this.
Yeah, I think that's the main difference between just straight bending, right?
Yeah, straight bending down and up.
Because that is mainly engaging your fingers, and that can be hard. But then with with turning it, you're using your arm and your wrist too.
Yeah. So it involves your wrist, like going up like this instead of just using your finger string. It's a great point. I didn't even realize that by going up like this, it's just your fingers making that for your strength to bend the note. But going from here to there involves your entire wrist moving. Yeah.
It's and it's kind of a small, subtle movement, but it does make a difference.
Make a big difference, yeah. I've been bending that note, so.
That's also another thing too.
Not bad. AG cross AQ strings.
Yeah. That's another thing though to point out, right? Is if you bend a lot, your strings are gonna
Yeah,
slip a little bit.
because you're tightening the strings and you're doing this. So imagine doing this and then turning it back again. It's going to mess up a little bit with your strings, but if you're not super bending it, it shouldn't be too bad. It might go just a little, like a hair, a few cents off, like either flat or sharp. Probably flat, more flat. And you can always just adjust it later.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's the thing that professional musicians do, though, right? Like they play a song with a lot of heavy bends, and then after that song, they tune up because they know like it's gonna slip.
Yeah, if you guys have seen us live at all, like you're gonna see me tuning after every song because bends are one of my favorite things to do. It's a very expressive thing to add onto your playing, and expression is a big deal to me in to conveying the right emotion with my melody lines. Okay, so next up, a reverse bend. So reverse bend, let's take a look at the points here. Since bending makes the note sharp, we can start with the bend, which is going to be a pre-bend, and then bend down. So not bend down like going like this, but bend that note down. So overshoot the note by a half or a whole step, it's totally up to you, and bend down to the desired note. So for example, if I wanted to do, I can start with bending it up to get that note. That's it right there. So I can do, or I can kind of make that slower to give a little bit more, squeeze out more emotion. So all right, so we're starting from the, we're not playing the note first. We're starting with the bend so that it's already sharp. And what we're doing is we're just releasing that tension to make that note flat. Or flat that note to pitch is basically what we're doing. So if we want this note, we can start out with this note first. Release the tension to get the desired note. This is called a pre-bend or reverse bend. Notice that I bent it first, bend, then play, and bend down. Alright, so any questions on bends? So we learned how to do bends and we learned how to do reverse bends.
So from YouTube,
Yeah.
I think, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Luri Souza.
Okay.
It's Lury.
Okay.
So I'm guessing that's what it is.
Luri?
Yeah.
Lori? I don't know.
I don't know if he's just trying to spell Larry, but then it's still you. But we'll see. He says that his fingers already have calluses because of playing, but they still seem to suffer when bending. Is that normal?
Because when you're, like I mentioned earlier, you're not kind of hitting it dead on, just like how you would with a normal, with a normal note. You're kind of hitting it from down here because you're angling your fingers down so that you're pressing up. You're hitting. Here's an example. So when I play my notes, this is where I'm hitting. See the line? When I'm bending, the note is here. See how much lower it is? So here is the original line, and here's the new line when I bend. So here's the original line, up here, and here's the new line. So here, original line, new line with the bend. So although you already have calluses from playing normal, it's going to hit a lower part of the pads of your fingers, so it's going to build new calluses when you're kind of getting used to these.
I think people also apply pressure like downwards, like towards the fretboard, because they think that's what they have to do to be able to bend and make it sound nice. But it's not actually that, right? Like after the initial note, you're actually pushing up. You're going more, you're
pushing up.
Upward motion.
You're not adding more pressure down. You're doing the same amount of pressure, and you're just going from from, like I said, the elbow to the shoulder. See like how it's pointed and up.
Yeah. So like instead of
instead of going from here up like this, or from the elbow to the shoulder.
Like when you do it, like just looking at your fingers, I can see like, oh yeah, that would not be fun to play bends that way. That looks like
like this.
Yeah, like
no.
doing it straight on, and like, oh, this is like little tips that you just kind of pick up to make bends easier, right? There's like another thing too, like, don't you do a technique where you do like a reverse bend, or you do a bend, but you I'm sorry, you mute all the other strings, like leading into it, so you kind of do like a...
Oh yeah. Like that, like...
Yeah, kind of. And I was gonna say too, like, bends are kind of like mutes, where you kind of have more leeway to be a little bit more dirty with it. Right?
Yeah, because you're muting the unwanted notes. So, I mean, you can get so much stuff just by combining what we learned last week and what we're learning this week. So just like what Kahaya was saying, you know, you can mute and bend at the same time. So I'm like muting those notes. So I could even play that melody line. So it's not the to make it a little bit different, you know? It's a copyright purposes. All right, so that is reverse bend. Those are bends, reverse bend. Remember, it's going to take a little bit. If this is your first time doing bends and such, it's going to take a little bit of practice in order for you guys get this down. Some people get it right away. Who knows? You know, so more power to those people who need a little bit more time. Okay. Next, what are tremolos? Here we go. This is we get this question a lot, so we're gonna answer this right now. Tremolos are notes played rapidly to create a trembling effect. Tremolos are used so that we can achieve faster rhythm patterns. For example, 16th or 32nd notes. All right, so that's what tremolos are. Trembling. I think tremolo is the Italian word for trembling. So it's kind of like it gives that feeling of a trembling or trembling effects with the strings. All right, so it allows us to play rapid notes. So this is how we play tremolos. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a peace sign like this. So just like this, peace sign. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna rest your thumb on your ring finger. So when I look at my thumb, let's go with the close here. My thumb has this knuckle, and my ring finger has this knuckle, right? So I'm doing my peace sign. Notice that this part of my my thumb, the knuckle, behind, should say it, in the front part of that knuckle. So here's where that knuckle is. I'm using this part. Okay, that part goes to that knuckle of your ring finger. So here it is. See that knuckle right there? This knuckle is gonna rest on that. And I'm gonna do my peace sign, and that's what it looks like, all right? So here it is from the side. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move that middle finger just a little bit forward. All right, so you can kind of see it. What you're gonna do now is you're gonna bend the wrist, and it's going to go on and rest directly on your soundboard.
Your middle finger.
Your middle finger, yeah, your middle finger. So once again, here it is, slow. Peace sign first. Make sure that the thumb knuckle is on the ring finger knuckle. This is how I do it, right? Profile. Middle finger goes forward just a little bit, so that it gives gives a little bit of space when we're doing the actual technique itself. Middle finger, your wrist is going to bend down like this. Okay, so from this position, so peace, kind of like taking a Japanese picture, and you're just gonna bend down like so. Okay, so we have this bend. We're gonna place it so that our middle finger is directly on our soundboard. All right, and what that does, what that causes you to do is it should have that middle finger, that thumbnail directly on the strings. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna pulse your wrist in order to create that sound. Okay, so here it is, step by step. Peace sign, knuckles, mid profile, middle finger forward, on, and resting on the soundboard. Thumbnail will be directly on the string, on the A string, E string, whichever string you want, and you're just pulsing that wrist. Okay, so let's take a look at our board once again, just to get more of an explanation here. So, creating a small X with the thumb and the ring. So what that is if I were to take it and look at it from this angle, see that X that's created? There it is. Perfect. So that thumb and the ring finger is creating an X. All right. Bend and position the wrist so that the middle finger is pointing directly at and resting on the soundboard. So we did that. So we bent our wrist so that it's directly on our, and you can see it from, here's another angle. So like this. So my middle finger, I just kind of rested it on my soundboard, and that gives me direct access to that string. Now, we're going to pulse the wrist to create an up and down motion with the thumbnail on a single string. So if you do not have a thumbnail, this tremolo technique will not work. You're going to need a thumbnail in order for this to work. Just a small thumbnail will do. Just anything kind of like protruding out, like of your so here's your skin, the skin of your thumb. You just need a little bit. So mine's is kind of long. And the longer, the easier it is. But you just need a little bit to protrude out in order to do this technique. All right. So, as far as the pulse goes, I want you folks to imagine like taking your strumming technique, right? So we're doing pointing to ourselves, pointing down to the ground. That same kind of technique. Now, imagine if you were to take your thumb and your pointer finger to kind of like holding a business card. You're gonna hand somebody a business card like this. Now, do that down, up, down, up, down, up motion. And I want that motion to get smaller and smaller so that it concentrates on just one string. So that pulse right there is the same pulse that you're going to be doing, because that's what it is, really, is doing strums and creating that kind of strum. Remember like how we did last week? We did kind of that dirty strum, and I said that I can kind of strum faster than I can pick. So this is that technique but it's concentrated on one string. So we're doing this. So imagine your thumbnail, it's just hitting one string. So I can kind of recreate that same, that same tremolo. Because all I'm doing is I'm just doing this big movement, but I'm doing it, I'm making it smaller and smaller and smaller so that it's concentrated on just that one string. Now, using that peace sign and holding it like this will cause me to do that exact thing, but a little bit more controlled. I'll do it like this so you guys can see it better. All right, any questions? No matter how many times we've explained this this technique, it is tricky, it is hard, so don't get discouraged when you're like, oh, it's not quite coming out right. There might be, a number of things that's causing that to not come out cleanly. First and foremost, having a long thumbnail is going to help out a lot. Too long might be too difficult, but just, getting that right amount of thumbnail in order to get a good, tremolo going on here is required. Okay, even just a small one, just a small little nub on the, on the thumbnail will, will grant you a little bit. Okay, so or a little bit of tremolo. Let's take a look at some tips on how we can do tremolos a little bit better. So A is to start out slow. B is to seriously slow, with 8th notes progressing to 16th and 32nd after you get the feel for it. So get the feel first, get the right, get the right, not technique, but the form. To get the right form to, to do the tremolo correctly, and just start out with the single, maybe quarter notes of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So it's the same kind of movement if I were to do. But just concentrated. It's just a pulse on the wrist. Then do 8 notes, which would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and this is why you need a nail, because you're gonna hit it on the stroke down and up. Okay, so and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and the 2 E and the 3 E and the 4 E and the 1 and 2 and 3. All right. So for some ukulele players, they like to use these 2 fingers. So I'm gonna show you folks other techniques of doing this. These 2 fingers right here. So your middle and ring finger is going to rest on the on the soundboard, just like how you did with your middle finger, and then you can just kind of do that same exact thing. But the reason why I don't do it that way is my thumb just kind of floats up in the air. There's no support for it, and why I use this kind of peace sign is so that my ring finger is helping stabilize my tremolo. You can do it without it. Some people like to use 3 even, to make sure that's all nice and steady on the soundboard. I know Jake likes to use 2. Sometimes he likes to use 3. Someone like Kalei likes to use his pointer finger for some reason. It's the same exact concept of the peace sign, except, like using it on your middle finger, creating that X instead. Here's that X. Instead of, just using your pointer finger there. So you can do that as well. So Kalei Gamiya does it like that. Jake does it with 2 fingers. I do it with the little peace sign. Chris Salvador doesn't use the anchor of the finger. I think he just does one of these, which is, like a concentrated down, up, down, up, down strum, which is super difficult. I don't know how he does that. But if you guys want to learn how to do that, head on down to the UU Plus master classes with Chris Salvador to learn how to do that style. Some people just do like a tremolo with, with their thumb on top of the E string like this, and their middle and pointer fingers do kind of a running man.
Oh, that's
do that as well. Imo Garza.
Yeah.
So all I'm doing is I'm doing this kind of running man movements, making sure that nothing else is being played. I'm taking my thumb, muting the E and the C and G together. So even if my middle finger kind of brushes up on the rest of the strings, it doesn't hit it. So I'm just doing this kind of running man on that A string. So it's not as clean, and it is not as or the tone is not as clean, and you actually have less control over that kind of tremolo. But if you're having a hard time doing this this type of tremolo, you're always free to do it that way. Okay.
Ilya on YouTube, Ilya asked if you should put accents between, like, when you're doing the tremolo.
Okay, you can if you want. Adding accents this early on is going to be beneficial because, just like the quick brown fox, kind of thing that we did earlier, that works on rhythm as well. So accenting different rhythms is going to be beneficial later on. So if you start that early, it's a good thing. You don't have to, but you can.
I brought it up because I think with like the Running Man,
yeah,
the rhythm is a little bit different too. Like it doesn't come out as like with if you're doing the tremolo with your thumb,
yeah,
it's pretty like straightforward where like every beat should be pretty consistent, right? But with the Running Man, since it's like 2 fingers, it does have more of
there's a stagger, like a small slight stagger. Yeah,
I think Imua teaches like other stuff like that he calls like the gallop and stuff, where it has that kind of feel too, right? Like where it's not in line with each other. Once
again, UU Plus master classes, Imua Garza will teach you all his techniques. All right, so the idea is we can always move our wrist to strum faster, and we condense that same method to allow us faster rhythm on single notes. So just like how we did earlier, this kind of fast strumming, because in order to strum really fast, you just have to be locked out a few times out of your house to make sure that kind of movement with your wrist, trying to open doors, is nice and loose. So that's why we did this kind of warm-ups in the very, very, very beginning of this of this series, is to just kind of loosen up your fingers. So when you do things like this kind of condensed strum. It's a lot not easier, but it's a lot more loose on your joints and your fingers before you attempt them.
I kind of laugh when we do get people who come in and they say, "Oh, I don't want to learn the strumming stuff. I just want to learn the picking stuff, and I want to learn like tremolo picking."
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that is strumming. Like if you
don't want to learn how to crawl, but I do want to run.
Yeah, and it's like, I promise, if you learn strumming, it will help. It does make it way better.
Yeah, I do want to jump, but I don't know how to walk or run.
The alternate name for tremolo is, or like what other people refer to it as, alternate picking, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like the idea is that you're not only doing down strum, you're doing down up, down up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to do that with like your thumb just by itself and not with that strumming motion,
Mm-hmm.
it's like way harder. So
Yeah.
like that's why it makes sense to just do that.
All right, so we have tips on tremolo. A couple more tips for you folks. The longer your nail is, the easier to achieve the tremolo. So we gone over that as well. You know, the attack the string directly and not at an angle. So this is another one that people kind of get messed up with. So why I say it to put your middle finger down directly and not, you know, and rest it on the soundboard, not an angle, is because you want a direct, you know, hit with your thumb. Here, let me kind of do it this way, like this. So you can kind of see that my thumb directly at it. It's not an angle like this. It's directly on the string. And the natural curve of our nail, here's a dropped here. Here's a example. So here's a pick. Okay, so picks look like this. It's a Dunlop pick. The natural curve of our nail is reminiscent of this part of our pick right here. And why we have an advantage with this kind of nail shape is that these curves on the side will help you glide through those round strings a lot easier. Because if it was straight, it's going to catch on the string instead of, you know, slide through. So with that kind of same, you know, with that same attack on the strings, you can actually achieve tremolos. So you're doing the same thing, but with your thumbnail. So it's like a pick that's attached to you. So see that? Same concept. It's like a concentrated or like a condensed attack on just that one area. It's pretty difficult for some people who are doing it for the first time, but don't get discouraged. It just takes a little bit of time to get into it. It took me quite a bit, like weeks, months, maybe even.
Because there's a difference between I don't know, it's kind of hard. It's a very subtle difference between a straight pick, right?
Yeah.
Like where you're hitting the string and then it's just like you feel the string pull off of your finger. But then with the tremolo, it's like you're kind of like rolling the string, or like you're letting
with the shape of your thumbnail.
Yeah, and you're letting it fall, right? Like it's you're not so much trying to hit it hard, but it's just like trying to get that too.
Yeah, and it's you know, with all these techniques, when I was first starting out, I actually tremoloed with my pointer finger, but that's the style of Troy Fernandez, and that's kind of how he did tremolos. So I would hold my, my pointer finger as if I was holding a pick like this. So I do the same thing, but using my pointer fingernail to get that. But because my pointer fingernail is thin, I get an undesirable thin sound. Because compared to that fat tone with my thumb. Because I stopped using that because it would break my pointer fingernail. Because my pointer fingernail is not as thick as my thumbnail, that would break pretty easily. So I would use, my middle finger after that would break. So I kind of learned how to use my middle finger. Once that broke, because that's not that thick either, I use my ring finger. And I became proficient at doing those. Even my pinky. But you can experiment to figure out different ways to do the tremolo. But this example that we showed you is the way that I do it. I showed you a couple of different artists that do tremolos in their own ways as well. All right.
Yeah. We have a couple questions about the tremolo. Joe said that he's having trouble holding the uke.
Okay.
And that when he does a tremolo, it feels like it's gonna shake out of his hands. And he also said that he mentioned that he has bigger arms. So
okay. So for tremolo, what you're doing is take a note, for example, and you want to be able to like push this your ukulele back like this. If I'm not holding my ukulele, I'm gonna be pinching it with my arm. So that's kind of where I see you getting a little bit of a hard time, is to get this. So what you're doing is from this position, you want to point to your fretboard, like where the fretboard meets the body of your ukulele. So take your pointer finger or your thumb, your pointer finger, like this. And what you're doing is you're just bending that wrist up so that it meets where you're supposed to be, like right on the sound hole, because your middle finger will go up here and rest here. So that's this kind of, it is awkward for me too because I have long arms as well. So this is the angle of my of my wrist and my arm. That's what it's going to kind of look like here. That's kind of a good angle there. So here's the strings. See that pulse? You can use your left hand to kind of hold it back, keep it against your body, and it helps with this kind of pinch with your forearm during this technique. But it is a tough balancing act. My suggestion would be to just sit down and try it first, and then stand up and try it without it, and you'll eventually get it. It's gonna take a little bit of time to get used to.
I don't like when people come to us and they ask like, oh, do I need a strap? It's like we usually try not to say like, oh yeah, you absolutely need a strap, like, because you should be able to play without
a strap. Yeah, don't have a strap right now.
Yeah, the tremolo is one of those techniques though that it kind of does help, like,
if you have a strap, and you might want to condense the pulse, because if you're pulsing too hard, then that'll cause your ukulele to kind of shake and stuff, and that pulse isn't really like a lot of movement or enough movement to move your entire ukulele. All right, so wow, we gotta get through this. We're almost done with this lesson. Let's quick fire round on the questions.
So Yoda and Devin both Yoda asked, how do you keep your middle finger from sliding off of the, like, as an anchor point?
I am still dealing with that problem. On the wooden ukuleles, not so bad. But on my ukuleles that have like that plastic clear guard, it does tend to slip off if my fingers are sweaty or something. That's it's just by feel. Like I don't have any advice for that, because I'm suffering through the same thing sometimes. And if it is kind of slippery, then what I like to do is my fingers bend like in a weird way, like this. So because my middle finger bends in a weird way, I use more pads of my middle finger to stop it from slipping. So you can kind of see my middle finger bending this way.
There.
So here's straight, and here's it kind of bending. So I get more surface area on the pad of my middle finger. But there's really no trick to it. Just make sure that you have more contact with the pad of your fingers so it doesn't slide off.
Yeah, and Devin said that he finds it harder to keep that peace sign with the middle finger, like to.
And if not, if you're sliding off, then use another technique like the two fingers, like how Jake does it, or maybe use the pointer finger like how Clay does it. You kind of have to find your own, your own way of doing the tremolo, and that's why people do it differently. I'm just showing you how I do it and what works for me. It might work for you. If not, make the right adjustments. And if you need help with those adjustments, one-on-one coaching over in UU Plus. All right. So let's move on. We got a lot more stuff to cover. Using that expression. So using the techniques we know to tell the story. So really listen and attach an expression or emotion to each technique. Here's some of mine. Here's some examples of mine. So slides are like a slur. Hammer-ons are like an abrupt change. pull-offs are like releasing attention. All right, so let's break this down. You want to be able to attach an expression or emotion, and here I did, you know, like a slur. Slides are like a slur. If I were to do so think of it as doing Mary had a little lamb. You want to be able to slur some of those notes. Mary had a little lamb. See how that kind of slurred? So if you think about it as if you're, you know, trying to tell a story, and this is the part where you slur it, you know, maybe you can do slides are like a slur, or you can do slides are like a slur. Instead of going slides are like a slur, you want to do slides are like a slur.
That song Tennessee Whiskey uses that slides a lot, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense for that song. Like if it's
you're drunk, you're slurring your words. Yeah. So that's a great example of, you know, putting an expression or emotion to each, you know, to each one of those techniques. Hammer-ons are like an abrupt change. So, you know, it goes hammer-ons are like an hammer-ons are abrupt change. Trying to make the lyrics. Hammer-ons are abrupt change. Hammer-ons are abrupt change. Abrupt. Abrupt. Hammer-ons are abrupt change. Sounds weird, abrupt.
This isn't an English class.
It's not, I guess. So if we were to do that, you can do. So you're kind of hammering it on, so you're not just playing this note. Because when you're playing each note, you're kind of hearing each note for its full value. But when you hammer it on, it's like you're still hanging on to the last note, and then when you hammer on, you get a different note. So you're still hanging on to this note, but then we hit you with that note. It's a nice abrupt change. Hammer-ons are abrupt change. And then pull-offs are like releasing attention. So, you know, we have this note. We can do. Imagine that that last part is where the most tension goes. But if we did you kind of hear it, you know, like release the tension from that note? All right. So if you attach emotions or expressions to these techniques like that, when you approach a melody line, it is a lot more expressive. And imagine if you're just kind of speaking. You know, if you're speaking and you just speak, or if you spoke straightforward, it sounds kind of boring and monotonous. So to break that monotony and boredom, you want to add techniques and add expressions and emotion to each technique, so that that melody line comes off with a little bit more feeling than sounding dead.
It's inflections, right? Like when you talk, you pause, or you get louder, or you do different things, and the same thing with music too. Yeah, when you're playing. So
okay, next up, techniques continued. Bends are like milking an emotion and making the audience feel the note go sharper. So you want to milk that emotion instead of going. You can do. So notice that I played that note and then I just milked it so that you can hear this note transition over to that note. That was like my my whole arm going up. All right, parallel octaves are like two people telling you an idea, one short and one tall person. All right, so that's, imagine we're doing Mary Had a Little Lamb. So Mary Had a Little Lamb. That's like one person telling you that Mary had a little lamb. But what if two people told you that? It's like a tall person and a little kid. So when you put it together, of course, you would play it cleaner than that. But it's a different way to get that same point across, but hearing it from two different voices. All right, so parallel octaves, just like that. And you want to be able to use all these emotional techniques when you're writing a song or when you're doing a solo to make that solo a lot more expressive, or to kind of tell a better story with your solo.
It's like we used the cooking analogy before, right? So it's like when you're making your solo, when you're first doing it, you can just like layer out the base ingredients,
like,
and then all these
ham, cheese.
Yeah, and then all these techniques are like spices that you add on top that really like kind of can bring it out.
Add a little bit of mayo, add a little bit of ketchup in there to like, oh, this is like an amazing ham and cheese sandwich.
Oh, it was Lunchables before, but now it's like, oh, this is pretty good.
Dry Lunchables.
Yeah.
The Ritz crackers are going down the wrong tube. Sorry, I'm just going off on a tangent here. Okay, so you can use all of these to make your story more interesting. Think about a conversation and how you would best relay your story. So first, you can use different emotions to tell different parts of your story. So for example, we have this. Maybe at first you want to show it so that it's just straightforward. By progressing the story that way, and each time that you play that same melody line and changing it a bit, you're adding more depth to the story that your music is trying to tell. Or, let's see, how do I do that? Maybe up here. Oh, it's still too low. Let's try to see if I can do. There we go. Maybe do it that way. There you go. So you tell a different kind of story. So it depends on what you're trying to convey. You can use these techniques to help you become a better storyteller music-wise.
And combine techniques.
Yeah,
too, right?
combining them, yes.
So.
All right, so here are your exercises for this week. So week number 8. First exercise that we have for you in order to get these concepts down sounds like this. So that's one. And if you want to see the play-alongs and the PDFs to these exercises, you can check out UU Plus, and we have it over there attached to the replay and also on the UU Plus forums. This next one is a tremolo picking, and it goes like this. So just playing those notes using the tremolo. So we got 0, 3, 7, 12. Then we get 3, 7, 10, 15. Just to get you familiar with doing your tremolos. All right. So the last exercise that we have for you sounds like this. And what I want you folks to do with this exercise is to be able to add expression to each different part. So maybe I want to add expression to that first slide. Maybe you want to add something to that that hit right there. So he goes. Or maybe that last part. So you want to be able to input some expressions and emotions to these exercises. All right, so you can find those over on UU Plus. Any last questions?
That last one, like, we didn't really talk about it, but something you did was the volume.
Yeah, so volume, adding different volumes, like getting louder, getting softer, is also another way to add expressions and emotions to your playing.
Yeah, in the actual play along or the exercise video.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of shows that difference in getting louder and then getting softer. So that's something that they might want to pay attention to when practicing.
All right, guys, so this is it for week number 8. We'll see you guys next... actually, we won't be seeing you next week. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we want you guys to have some fun, celebrate with your families, and have dinner with your folks. If you don't want to have dinner with your families, have dinner with your friends, with your significant other, with with your cat, dog, whatever it may be. I wish you guys a very, very, very happy Thanksgiving, and I'll see you guys on the next week after that. So not this coming Thursday, but the Thursday after Thanksgiving. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Also, that Friday, we won't have Aloha Friday jams either. So next week, there's no Thursday or Friday. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow on the Aloha Friday live jam. Anything else you want to add, Kahai?
Or pretty soon with the one-on-one coaching.
Yes, one-on-one coaching for all of you UU Plus students. Make sure you stick around. We'll get to those one-on-one coachings as fast as we can. I know we're slotted for 2:15. It is 2:12. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Have a great one. On behalf of myself, Aldrin Guerrero, and Mr. Kahai the Legend Fergan, aloha.